Hello and welcome to E2E's Business Unusual, a video content series for and by the SME community. Our focus is on helping entrepreneurs navigate this very difficult environment since COVID-19. Today we're joined by Martin Leuw, founder of Growth4Good. Martin, welcome and thank you for being part of this.
Thank you very much, Fergus.
And just to get the ball rolling, Martin, you're an entrepreneur by background, but you're also a founder of Growth4Good. Could you just give us some background on you, your career, the companies you founded, and what you're doing now?
Sure, I've had a very varied background, Fergus, and when I look back, I've sort of been running businesses through 4 different downturns now as well, so it feels very relevant to what's going on with COVID. So if I take the early 90s, which was just a period of high interest and mainly massive reductions in property values, which affected the whole economy. During the early 90s, I was running a cartoon animation business, but that was providing supplies to the cartoon industry. And the biggest impact on us then, which we weren't expecting, was technology, as cartoons moved from traditional techniques to becoming computerized. So I saw the impact that technology could have in early 90s. So this is pre-internet, in disrupting a whole sector. That was coupled then, I guess, by moving the mid-90s to setting up a corporate venture in healthcare, which was a medical communication center. And then the late 90s, a dot-com also in healthcare, and then followed by the dot-com sort of both boom and then collapse. And then the late 2000s, 2007, 2008, so I built a business called Aris Software, where I took over from the founder and grew that from 100 to 1,200 people, from 2 million EBITDA to 50 million EBITDA over a 10-year period. So a period of massive growth in the from the early 2000s to the late 2000s. And then the last 8-9 years, I've been building a portfolio through Growth4Good with a real focus on businesses where there's a combination of real purpose and benefit to society with making money. So the way I describe it really is using business as a force for good. So where purpose is integrated, and not only are you there to make money, but also to improve society in some way.
Interesting and very varied. And going back and not to focus on the gloom, but we are in a very difficult environment right now for people and for business. But it sounds like you've got a great sector experience, but also just great experience of working through and leading through kind of adversity. Are there lessons that you're applying from earlier experiences? And yes, this is very difficult. And is there advice you're providing other entrepreneurs, whether in portfolio businesses or your general network?
Yeah, so in a situation like this, you're always navigating, and so often the term that people use is uncharted territory, and that's true to an extent, but some of it's charted because we've had downturns before. So it does depend very much on how your sector is being hit. So in the dot-com period, I was running a tech business, and tech was hit really hard. Not all parts of the economy were hit. And in the same way this time round, it's leisure and hospitality in particular, and retail that are being hit very, very hard. So it really depends on where you are within the whole spectrum in terms of what you're providing. But the main principle for me are really threefold, 3 key things. One, the absolute imperative, which I guess now 7 to 8 weeks in, everyone's been doing, is conserving cash, looking at all of your outgoings. What can you reduce? How can you reduce things without hopefully impacting the long-term potential of the business? So it's how do you cut into fat, if you'll excuse that expression, rather than into muscle. But really important to look at it that this could last quite a long while. We hope that it won't last too long. But you've really got to look at it that this could at least be 12 months and make sure that you can conserve the cash So ensuring that you're bringing all the income in you can and minimizing your outgoings. The second thing, as long as you've got a business that you can see can survive, yeah, it is how do you get match fit? How do you use this time to look at everything that you do to be able to do it more efficiently, better? Because we all know as businesses grow, and particularly during a period of growth, there are certain parts of your business that have probably become inefficient. So it's looking at the core and seeing how you can do it better. And then the third one is incredibly important, is that whole area around mental health, both for yourself as a business leader, keeping yourself balanced, and also thinking about your employees, both those that are still within the business, those that are furloughed, and also where sadly you have to make people redundant. It is ensuring that you're thinking about each of those groups, because quite often it's the ones that are still working that carry more mental stress than you often think of. You're thinking about the people that are being furloughed or made redundant, quite rightly, but it's the people that are still left behind working hard to keep the business alive that you need to manage carefully. So my role now as a chairman, the way I try and describe it, is that if we were flying a plane and you're the experienced pilot supporting maybe the next generation of pilot, it's as you go through air pockets, you know you're not going to crash. So you've got to have your eye on where you're heading and manage both the pilot and the rest of the passengers through that period where every time you hit an air pocket, you know, hopefully, that you're not going to crash, that you're actually going to be able to continue. So it's keeping sight on where you're heading and making sure you're making the right decisions for the medium to long term, as well as the short term survival.
You mentioned something when you were talking about, employee relations or just keeping in contact with the team. And yeah, it's not an area that a lot of people talk about, whether it's survivor's guilt or people just taking on more work because others have been furloughed. But are there, around helping those employees who remain and are perhaps dealing with more stress? Are there kind of actions that you've helped your portfolio businesses or others take?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is level of contact. And one thing which is becoming much more apparent now, and it's the same with the way the government are or have to deal with data and data analysis, which I think has been too slow now. If you look at what's happened so far and the way that this whole very difficult situation is being managed, the more data you've got, the better decisions you can make. And so, therefore, knowing how your employees are feeling by getting them to respond to surveys, how often they're receiving contact from their line manager, and whether that's working or not working. The more you can start to get a feeling through active connection as to what's working and what's not working will help you. So if you're there at the centre, and certainly in the businesses where I'm chairman, we've in both cases, I've got two businesses I chair, there's almost like a control center that is keeping tabs on what's happening to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to support our employees with their mental health as well as their level of activity.
And then in terms of the founders, the entrepreneurs, again, it sounds like you've been through not this before, but very challenging times. Those air pockets. I think it'd be correct to say. Um, from my side, that being an entrepreneur has been very glamorous, at least for the past 10 years, with all the venture money coming in. But it's also very stressful. Founders are putting themselves out there essentially to be judged on their idea and their execution, even in good times. So very stressful anyway. But are there, I don't want to say tips because that sounds too easy, but are there actions that you recommend these founders take to preserve their mental health and really keep going as they are in these air pockets?
There are a range of things. I mean, certainly it's very lonely, always running a business, and it's particularly lonely during a period like this. So any opportunity to join small networks of people, I don't know to the extent that E2E is creating small forums of CEOs and founders, But that does help. I mean, I chaired a web seminar last week, which pulled together a group of about a dozen business leaders, and it's great to have the opportunity for people to share experience. And part of what I'm doing as chairman is actually sharing between companies that either I'm invested in but not on the board, or invested in, and chairman, to encourage them to talk to each other and share best practice. So you can get rid of some of the loneliness by speaking to others and learning what works for them and what hasn't worked for them. That's probably the really key thing. I think the second one is really about thinking about how to get match fit. So if that would help, I can sort of move on to a sort of 5-point plan I've been using to think about, if as you start to consider how you're going to come out of this and build your business stronger and better than it was before, what are the key things to really think about? So for me, number one, given what I'm doing at Growth4Good, it's really about purpose. The one thing that binds people together is thinking about what their business is actually there to do. If you're involved in health right now, that's an easy one, because you know you're there about actually helping save lives and improve lives. But most businesses have got some sort of purpose and can identify what they're actually doing for society. And I think that's really, really key, as are your values. So the way that employers behave now will be remembered by both employees and quite possibly by customers. So staying true to your values is absolutely key. I think the second one is really thinking about why people buy from you, and also looking at the difference between maybe business that you were completing that you won before COVID occurred and what you're now winning. And if there's a difference, why are you winning it now? And what can you do to ensure that there are compelling events as to why people will buy from you? And it is really compelling. So for me, in a business to business world, what makes your sale compelling is if you save money, if you save time, if you help your customer generate additional revenue or improve customer service. Those are real compelling reasons why people might buy from you. So understanding that compelling event, I think, is really key too. Number three is just really looking at your organizational structure, ensuring that you've got really clear accountability for who does what, who's responsible for what, and you've really got the right people on the bus to support you. You might want a different skill set of people and different characteristics than you would have during a period of normal growth with what you actually need right now. I think the fourth one is around your processes. So how are you deploying technology to improve and automate and accelerate what you're doing? How are you using data? And then the fifth one really is all around your business development capability to ensure that you're clear strategically around what your goals are, that you've got the right skill set, you're structured in a way that's going to make sense, and also that you're using, again, technology in a way that allows you to convert sales as effectively as possible. So those are my five sort of main sort of match fit priorities, I guess.
If an entrepreneur is watching this and thinking, okay, match fit, I get it. And the hardest thing in the world is taking that first step, just getting kind of started on this type of process. Is there just an action to get things moving that they can take?
I think the key action for me really is all around involvement of other people. So when we talk about communication, there's often a danger that you feel you've communicated when the communication has left you. So you've communicated, for example, to your team, you've let them know what's going on, but unless you've actually ensured that the communication has been received and understood in the way that you intended, it hasn't worked. And so collaboration is key with all of this. And for me, it's all around reminding people, first and foremost, really using the Simon Sinek Golden Circle technique of why we do what we do, how we do it, and what we do. Keep it simple. Keep it really simple and collaborate.
And Martin, from all of this experience at the helm of these companies, is there a particular learning that you've taken and would like every entrepreneur, business leader to think about during this time?
Yeah, I think there's two things actually, Fergus, related to people. One is always to remember that to treat people the way you'd want to be treated. I'm sure people do, but it's just a reminder that during a difficult situation, always to think about what it's like to be the other person. And then I think the second really important one that I learned from the dot-com period was that it's better to cut deep once rather than death by 1,000 cuts, and how difficult it is to do it. The worst thing that you can possibly do is have a situation where your employees are waiting each week or each month to see what happens next and who's going to go next. It's far easier ultimately to do it once and then be able to say to people, we're going to review it again in 3 months or whatever the period is, so that they've got time to focus on everyone working together on their jobs rather than worrying about their security the whole time. So difficult to do it, but really important to do it once and deep rather than death by 1,000 cuts.
Thank you. And anticipate, not to put you on the spot here, you'll have an interesting response to the next surprise question, Martin. But around the government aid packages that they've provided business, and then connecting that with what society, taxpayer, government will then expect of business, and I'm thinking particularly growth for good, right? With a purpose, with a social purpose. Do you anticipate a change in how society, government will view business and expect different outcomes from business going forward?
I certainly hope so, Fergus. I started doing this about 8 or 9 years ago, where I realized that to create a virtuous circle, a really successful business, the key things that you need to do is to manage your stakeholders well. And so if you create a great place for people to work, and you've got happy and motivated employees, then that will assist the way the business performs. If you do the same for your customers and create an amazing customer experience, then a combination of both the employees and the customers with the right business model hopefully will enable you to perform well. And the next element is, what can you do for society? How can you improve things either environmentally or socially or both? And I think that the way that capitalism has evolved over the course of the last few decades is that business, in many cases, has got quite a bad rap, and quite rightly. And the more that we can start to see businesses actually contributing to society, they will actually, I think, succeed far better by demonstrating the values that society expects of business. So if you work for somewhere where you're proud of what they do and they create a great customer experience, I'd expect businesses like that to perform, particularly if they're benefiting society in some way as well. And I think to simply rely on both government and charities and NGOs is just not enough, because the businesses have got so much resource, particularly in the way of talent, as well as larger businesses that have got financial resources that can play a part, that I think things will start to change.
Oh, okay, that's great. And maybe there's someone from government ringing you up to say how can business get started. So, and obviously don't worry about it. Business unusual, as we spoke about at the beginning. We're unfortunately not in a studio and doing this from an appropriate distance. Um, and then just in terms of wrapping up and thinking a little bit more to the future, what are you, both professionally but potentially also personally, as lockdown ends and we're able to get to the next normal? What are you looking forward to achieving?
So I think it's very much more of the same, Fergus. I mean, everything I do now is around what part can business play, yeah, in helping improve both the environment and also the way that we deliver on social goals. So delivering business as a force for good, where you can do well by doing good, is absolutely key to everything that I do. So I think it's more of the same. But as I said, I do believe that one of the outcomes of this really horrendous situation we're in now is that there will be more focus on that. And it's certainly something which the next generation of entrepreneurs, I think, are going to pick up and run with. And certainly people like me who've been in business for a while, hopefully can support that next generation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, you don't want to say the timing is right because, as you said, it's
No,
horrendous time, but it does feel, yeah, you've been maybe more than the 10,000 hours of growth for good. But as we exit this, it feels like there's you'll be busier than ever.
sounds like it.
Martin, I just want to say thank you very, very much for your time. I really appreciate you joining us today.
It's been a pleasure.